Mission, TIM provides leadership in understanding industry trends and creating innovative strategies to attract companies and jobs in advanced manufacturing, aerospace, and aviation sectors. He has experience working in various high-technology industries in support of advanced manufacturing, aerospace, and defense programs. Previously, he worked in satellite, launch vehicle events, and transportation. Tim has 36 years of manufacturing experience in the aerospace and defense industry, having worked for major defense contractors including L3 Harris, Raytheon, and Texas Instruments. Please join me in welcoming Director Tim Smith.
Good morning, everyone. Zoe just mentioned to me the cards on the table there. Please plan to submit questions. This is really your time, your conference. We just are here to help enable the discussion. So thank you. Again, thanks to the students and all the work, the monumental task that it takes to really pull off this event and bringing in the experts as you're seeing today. It's just fantastic. So another round of applause. So good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm pleased to have a distinguished panel to talk about the advanced air mobility supply chain. So panelists, if you would please come forward. We're going to change this up a little bit. I've given them a little different task. They're going to talk about their organizations. I'm going to set the stage on some of the strategy that we have going on here in Ohio. The idea is education and information. And as we talk about supply chain, it's really about growing. So today we have with us leaders from NASA, Hartzell, Propeller, UAMMI, and Hexcel Corporation. So you can see it's very strategic on what we're doing here. So panelists, thank you for being here. In November 2021, Morgan Stanley released a report that estimates the global eVTOL market is projected to reach $1 trillion by 2040 and $9 trillion by 2050. In Ohio, the advanced air mobility market is projected to be $13 billion by 2045, according to the Crown Consulting Report. I see the market potential for investors and industry sectors is very significant. It cuts across aerospace, automotive, manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare, all of which are streams here in Ohio. So we are here to talk about Ohio's supply chain. So allow me to set the stage. I'd like to share with you Ohio's advanced air mobility strategy. First, Ohio, we are positioned to strengthen our role as the top supplier state in advanced air mobility. We are focused on OEM service provider attraction to build, test, and fly here in Ohio, to promote Ohio's AAM manufacturing supply chain. That's why we're here and that's why we're having this discussion. To enable market development in key sectors such as healthcare and cargo logistics, and to provide leadership with advanced air community integrations. And I'll just say that we are currently in those discussions. We're having round tables across the state with the metropolitan planning organizations to open up a dialogue, get the feedback. So again, Ohio is leading. I want to talk about Ohio's strong aerospace supply chain. You've heard some of it earlier this morning. We have well over 550 aerospace suppliers operating today. We are the lead supplier state to Boeing and Airbus. And we're finding that suppliers are pivoting to advanced air mobility, and pleased to have Hartzell here, who is doing just that. They share a little bit more about their strategy. In Ohio, supply chain understands aerospace technical and safety requirements and knowledgeable of production scale-up, paramount to growing the industry. And Ohio is home to many innovations, including hybrid electric engines, lightweighting materials, and additive manufacturing. So a key importance is to understanding Ohio's aerospace supply chain. You saw a similar chart earlier this morning, but you see concentration up in Northeast Ohio, Southwest, and Western Ohio. That's not by accident, but these are all operating businesses today. So we see that as a strength. What we are doing is not only acknowledging and reaching out to the supply chain, but also looking at the supplier gaps. AAM requires new innovations in electric motors, high-density batteries, propeller systems, hydrogen subsystems. Also, Ohio has a unique position in that we have the Ohio Federal Research Network, which has the role of connecting industry, academia, our federal partners at NASA and AFRL to offer that new technology, that innovation, and move towards commercialization. We've looked at eVTOL major systems, and that's what this diagram is. Compliments to Kitty Hawk for their vehicle. You see a notional vehicle with all the systems that support flight. The eVTOL OEMs have created various vehicle designs and configurations for movement of people and cargo. We looked at the eVTOL major subsystems, and you see that many of these involve current aerospace products that are in the supply chain today. Now, if you look at Ohio's potential and our call to action, if you're not on the list and you want to be on the list, let me know. So we think this is important because the suppliers that you're seeing here today are currently providing into the commercial and defense markets, and our position to rapidly scale up manufacturing and understand regulatory safety requirements and can support the eVTOL manufacturing. So that's the state of where we are today. I thought it was worthwhile to share that with you. And now we'll transition to our panel. So I'd now like to hear from our various panels on the view of AAM supply chain. First, I'd like to introduce Davis Hackenberg. Davis is Advanced Air Mobility Mission Integration Manager from Washington, D.C. He works with other agencies and industries to determine ways to overcome barriers and make flying cars a reality. Davis works with various states to support advanced air mobility adoption. Looking forward to his insights in the emerging supply chain. Please welcome Davis Hackenberg.
Fix that. First from NASA, just thank you to all of you. So many references to our agency over the morning. Always makes you feel good as a representative of the agency when you have, such distinguished speakers up talking about your agency, its history, and what we're actually working on today. And thanks to Tim for letting me come back. I was out here in November with you guys down in Springfield. One of the most impressive demonstration and meeting days I've had in quite a long time. You've heard the list of companies out in Springfield. Been about 2 years since I've seen an aircraft at that point, right? So I got to see Lyft, Moog, Kitty Hawk, and then the Beta and Joby simulators all in one day. And they set up a nice track. We've been pretty interested in the medical use case lately of I think it was 8 different hospitals. That came kind of followed the track around. I got to do the tours with them and talk the use case and really just learn a lot from their perspective. So same type of thing here today. Great job setting this up. And, thanks to Tim. I was a late fill-in on supply chain. PK, if you know him, Thermal Predictor, is the supply chain genius behind all of this at NASA. The ideas in this brief that are specific to supply chain are his. I though am an early adopter at our agency for sure and understand the importance of it with the diverse work I do across advanced air mobility and our mission. I think it was about 1.5 years ago that the PK really convinced me. Obviously, the onset of COVID didn't hurt when you couldn't get toilet paper and all that stuff, but you realize how important the supply chain is. PK kind of quoted some of the typical Elon Musk quotes. What are they real quick? engineering's easy, production's hard. The supply chain stuff is really tricky. I like the tricky problems; they're fun. I think PK is the same. Pick the most challenging stuff and try to work on it and make it better and make this industry great. Really impressive to see the Ohio supply chain. I hadn't seen all the dots on those maps, but clearly, obviously, an impressive state for aviation. So kudos to all of you. With that, I'll get started. A little bit of an overview on myself and our mission, and then work into kind of some of the work that PK is doing at NARI and our role. Discuss a couple initiatives and then some of the opportunities for supply chain. First, our advanced air mobility mission. So you heard from William on the last panel. Airspace, one of the biggest things we have going on. Obviously, it's an area where when you look at long-term R&D and the transformations that our national airspace system is going to go through, really ripe role for NASA leadership. William, his project, Kurt Suringa, a lot of our team, just great work going on from an R&D perspective, and even near-term, far-term implementation. I think our team does a great job of being a leader in that industry. PK was one of the founders of that as well. And we kind of started this new airspace stuff in a lot of ways, but it was really quick that the industry caught on. So many of the traditional OEMs realized the importance of the airspace side. A lot of work in vehicles in our mission directorate. So everything from propulsion, noise, acoustics tools, crashworthiness, environmental, all kinds of stuff on vehicle design. Great stuff happening. We do a lot of work on automation of vehicles as well. That automation story spans across both vehicle, airspace, safety, and then even into the community work. So as we progressed our drone and advanced air mobility portfolios over the years, we realized how important it was to be integrated with these local communities because of how close to home all these technologies are going to be versus, outside of the town of an airport where really noise is the only day-to-day interaction that the local communities would have with the aircraft. This will be very day-to-day in the future, though. So the community piece is so important. Partnerships with states, localities, and such are so important to our agency as we move forward with this portfolio. About 75% of our portfolio is R&D related. So working on specific technology domains, integrating those together, and developing software, as William said, and concepts that we'll study through our simulation environment. Partnerships for us are huge. Hopefully you've heard about our AAM ecosystem working group. So we just kind of have a broad open forum, not Federal Advisory Committee Act limited, I guess. So we can talk to everybody. Everybody can show up when we talk about some of the hardest topics that are out there. We have really robust industry partnerships. So most of the companies that are flying here in Ohio, we have direct partnerships with, either in our R&D side or our national campaign side. FAA is extremely important to us. They're probably our most valued partner. We transition everything we do as far as concepts, technologies, to data directly to the FAA. SDOs are huge for us as well. And then our national campaign series, it's kind of our flagship project, if you will, where we integrate many of our technologies that are developed by our great researchers in a manner that we can look at the whole ecosystem, perform flight tests, gather data that we share with our researchers and share with the industry. And all this to us is a means to an end to develop the requirements and the architectures that the industry will be able to certify. So we try to look broadly across everything that needs to happen, progressive through the technologies and build requirements and supporting architectures that the industry will be able to take, go through certification and actually show up in a local community near you. This is a top level look at mostly the R&D areas that we have going on across our organization. So again, back to William, the two blue at the top are representative of the AAM specific portfolio that they have. William also talked about how long endurance Vision 2045 that is kind of the FAA's or NASA and the FAA's joint vision of the future for what airspace will look like. I talked a little bit about the vehicle work that we have and then the community work. So obviously our supply chain work is integral to all of this. If you look at the diverse technologies and architectures that we're working on, you can imagine the components that we need to build those architectures and test and simulate them and flight test those are similar to the full ecosystem that the supply chain is going to need. We don't always get down to the ball bearings and stuff. We will use our partners, aircraft partners, to build the aircraft generally to get to that point. But we have insight, like few others do, in supply chain that makes us a kind of a key player on it. As we get started on almost any research portfolio item, an overall view of the market is always important to us. When we pivoted our portfolio from UAS to UAM and then AAM back in the 2017-18 timeframe, we started with 2 significant market studies. Some of the ground people in the room were a large part of one of those 2 market studies. We take a broad scan of the whole industry. We form our partnerships with other government agencies and key leaders in the industry. That's the same thing that we're doing with supply chain here. The National Defense Authorization Act is instrumental, and it gets us partnered with, directs us to be partnered with other organizations like the military, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, FAA, and there's a joint activity going on right now where those agencies are sending out surveys to all agencies, scanning the full industry of what all of aerospace needs, not just specific to advanced air mobility like I am day to day, but scanning that full industry, leveraging all the resources we have. I don't know the exact number, but something like hundreds of thousands of contracts and procurements come through our FedBizOps system over the years that we have access to look at what the full aerospace supply chain actually is. You can aggregate all of that. We do stuff specific to advanced air mobility, where I think it's like 600 different companies have responded across all the different sectors of the ecosystem to what they are, what they contribute to the supply chain. And as they respond to what they contribute, they discuss the barriers. So we can take all that as an organization, aggregate it all, and use it to make informed decisions on what the research portfolio should be. So PK is a big idea guy. Again, these are his ideas, but one of the first big ones that he's been pushing a lot recently is the Aero supply chain ecosystem. So essentially, linking up the entire supply chain digitally. I have a few experiences over my career doing integration and tests where it's been very difficult for us to find aerospace grade replacement bolts for different spacecraft projects I worked and things like that. A full aerospace supply chain digital environment would enable so many different things that we don't have today. PK talks about it being a blockchain, but it has a similar concept to UTM, where it's overall it's a federated system. Everybody has access to it. Link the top of the supply chain to the bottom of the supply chain through all the tiers, the third-party logistics providers, ensuring that everything that is coming is aerospace grade, helping minimize counterfeiting and other things like that. And linking up this whole supply chain is it's a huge idea that I think we're already starting to work on. Has a lot of traction within the government agencies, and it will require the whole industry really to want to participate and contribute to if it's going to be enabled for this new and emerging advanced air mobility ecosystem. And then modeling and sim. So if you look at our current portfolio at NASA, I think most of the people that partner with us in automation areas appreciate the capabilities that we bring to the table across our labs and flight test environments, in addition to the people that we have. But modeling and sim is a backbone of everything that we do, whether that's fast time, human in the loop, or other. We are experts on it. For automation specifically, a lot of our partners talk about our modeling and sim platform being a validation framework for automation for the industry. The same types of concepts can apply to supply chain. So you can imagine if you build this digital environment, you could use a modeling and sim capability to start studying it. What happens if copper is limited? What happens if there's a natural disaster in this location where the majority of our nation's material X comes from? And you can look at these different scenarios, identify deficiencies in the supply chain, identify long-term aggregate needs, and maybe be more strategic about supply chain overall rather than so reactionary. Being built based off of today's demand, bottoms up, having shortages and inventory being very, very common. Looking at things like batteries that are future capabilities that so few companies are working on in the supply chain network of today, and so much of it is being done vertically through some of our other major league companies. But anyway, you can envision that. Be really, really powerful thing. We're working with standards bodies. SAE-G31 is one of the important ones right now on how we do these digital transactions, if you will, and how this modeling and sim platform could be enabled and be leveraged by the industry. And in the end, this is to build a more efficient supply chain. We can do it from today all the way through the long-term needs of this ecosystem. So with that, I think I'm about at my time, but I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Davis, and thank you for your leadership and really helping bring the industry up and really focused on integration and on the supply chain piece of that. So thank you. And we've had some great work on the healthcare side, so got a lot more to share on that front. I now would like to introduce David Beckerman of UAMMI. That is the Utah Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Initiative. David is the lead analyst at UAMMI. He evaluates economic factors affecting the advanced manufacturing materials industry in Utah. He assists the industry with financial and strategic assessments in support of small business technology transfer programs. And in aviation, he worked for Delta Airlines to prepare demand forecasts on behalf of aircraft manufacturers and aerospace suppliers. He brings over 25 years of experience in business analysis to UAMMI, to the team. So please help me welcome David Becker.
Morning, everybody. So one question you might have is, what's Utah doing at Ohio Air Mobility Systems? Ohio actually has a pretty strong aerospace and defense manufacturing history, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But I'll let you take a look at some key markets that we operate in while I tell you a little bit about exactly what Utah Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Initiative is. It's a nonprofit membership organization that our members don't have to pay anything because we're federally and state funded. But we're supported by a number of different companies that are using advanced materials or advanced manufacturing to solve large companies such as Hexcel, later, Boeing is on our board. These folks are using advanced materials all the way down to mom and pop shops who are, as many of you know, kind of integral to supply chain issues. Utah is a state of 3.4 million people. By the time I'm done talking, we'll probably be 3.5 million. Moving there is a great place. So very small compared to Ohio, but it is the home of carbon fiber. Carbon fiber technology is pretty much invented in Utah, and that's why it has a very strong role in the state and why Utah has a strong role in aerospace. We're also home to Hill Air Force Base, and many of you, if you've been involved in the Air Force, I'm sure you've been there. It's home currently to the F-35 program. When it comes to advanced air mobility, our organization supports a number of firms in the AAM ecosystem throughout the state. As Tim mentioned, we support SBIR and STTR grants. And a cool little firm called Electrify just received their second round STTR grant. So Electrify has this kind of motorcycle-like UAV, and no, it's not UAV, it's crude, but it advanced technology, and the intent is dual use. Why do they have to grant? Well, because the military sees potential for this application, but that set the standard for some role of personal air mobility. So very forward thinking. We collaborate with a number of major suppliers. One that is both big and Ohio and Utah is, of course, Packard. Really awesome company. So really turning to a supply chain issue that Utah got involved in was reshoring. So reshoring is bringing manufacturing that is currently overseas, or perhaps was shipped overseas, by U.S. companies back to our shores. And in the current economic parlance, reshoring also includes, you might be a company that didn't outsource overseas, manufacture here, but you know that, gosh, I could probably make that part that's currently made in Shenzhen, China. It might cost a little more for me to do it. Like, if you end up doing that, that is considered a form of reshoring. It's was that several of our members were coming to us. This is about 4 months into lack of toilet paper, and said, you know, everybody's talking about reshoring. The Trump administration had this stuff out about we got to bring manufacturing back to the United States. The Biden administration, you know, is continuing that. You know, if all these reviews going on at the different agencies about, you know, unify more America, what financial assistance is there to, you know, to do that? Now, remember, a lot of our cluster members are small manufacturers. So, and small has different definitions. Anybody under 500 employees is a small manufacturer, but a lot of firms, 40, 50. So, the cost to them of acquiring new tool and die is significant. Well, it is for any company, but in terms of, you know, the size of their company relative to their revenues. So, they said, you know, doesn't the federal government like give money to companies to reshore? No, they don't. What about the states? So we took a look as part of it. We are also assembly for UDMC. That's the Utah Defense Manufacturing Community. Most of you are probably familiar with the fact that there's the Ohio Defense Manufacturing Community. So we're partners with them through a larger umbrella organization. In any event, through that, through a grant from UDMC, we undertook a survey. We looked at what do other states do with reshoring? Why is there money out there? And we found that very, very few states were doing anything other than saying, oh, if you would like to reshore to our state, please do. Sounds good. So a couple, and so in a couple actually, I mean, you'd be surprised if you typed in a certain state in Google and typed reshoring, you wouldn't get to a state webpage. You might get to the Reshoring Initiative, which is a great organization, and their profile of that state. But individual states wouldn't have a lot up. JobsOhio now does have a reshoring page. The Commonwealth of Virginia has one. Kansas has a pretty good one. But even then, there weren't necessarily funds tied to that. You would then be directed to general economic incentives. If any of you have ever worked with economic development corporations, local or state, you'll often find that the assistance they provide is post-performance. Okay. You start a firm, you hire 40 people, 5 years down the road, we will refund employment taxes, for example. It's not bad, but for companies that are saying, hold on, I want to reshore. Everybody says it's a national priority, but I don't really have the financial wherewithal to do it. So post-performance doesn't seem that great. So we said, okay, well, that's what we've learned from doing a survey. And we reported that up through EDC Utah, which is also called Go Utah. As a result, Utah has taken a step to kind of correct this through the Manufacturing Modernization Grant Program. So it was just passed in the grant legislative, the most recent legislative session here in 2022. Governor Cox of Utah was a big supporter of this. It establishes a $10 million grant. $10 million is not a lot of money. But if a company can come along and say, well, I just need $1.5 million, and that'll get me tool and dies that I need to produce a part that goes into the defense supply chain that's currently only manufactured in China. It's a step in a positive direction. And the idea is that this first year, we'll see what happens with folks that are applying. That's why it's a small amount, $10 million. And let me tell you, Utah is a very financially conservative state. So if we see success, and we do hope to see success, then it is reasonable it will be expanded to $50 million in the future or so forth. Very important. The legislation specifically says what I have to do there: establish, relocate, retain, or develop manufacturing in the state and lessen dependence on manufacturing overseas. So that's the goal. We would love it if other states begin to adopt this as well. rising, as we said earlier, rising tides raise all boats. This would then enhance the supply chain nationally and enable us to be more self-supporting in these critical areas. So there's more information, of course, at UAMMI.org, and we'll be talking more about it. So thanks very much.
Thanks, David, and he brings the importance of not only are we looking and focused on what's going on here in Ohio, but it's also what are other states doing, and what is the best of breed? Where should we be focusing on that collaboration? And on the onshore, yes, we are focused on that at JobsOhio. We're looking strategic. As the third largest manufacturing state, it's critical to what we do and how we do it, and to our suppliers. So. Yeah, we are leaning in on that. I'd now like to introduce Mitch Heaton from Hartzell Propeller. Mitch is the Director of Business Development and New Technology at Hartzell Propeller. He joined Hartzell in January of 2022 to further Hartzell's strategy effort in advanced mobility, eVTOLs and eSTOLs, an electric, hybrid, and hydrogen-powered aircraft. Hartzell Propeller is the global leader in advanced aircraft propeller design manufacturing technology, and is the supplier of choice for nearly every major aircraft manufacturer. Using an innovative blend of sophisticated engineering analytics, certification skills, and world-class manufacturing technologies, Hartzell is working closely with the OEMs to fine-tune propeller applications. Hartzell has dedicated tens of thousands of engineering hours to electric, hybrid, and hydrogen-powered aircraft since 2019. The company continues to make advancements in tooling, manufacturing processes, and lightweight materials. Please help me welcome Mitch Heaton.
Thanks for having me, everyone. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. I came from Dayton Development Coalition most recently, had a consultancy of my own before Hartzell picked me up at the beginning of the year, and I have really enjoyed getting back into the aviation space because truthfully I missed it. It's become very much a part of me since 2005, and I realized, you know what, this is kind of a home for me, and I got to get back to it. So it's great to be here with all of you, and it's great to be with such a world leader in propellers. Talking about supply chain and talking about everything that we're doing up here, I put up this slide. I start with this slide because there's so many freaking words what we're doing and how we're doing, right? I mean, yes, it does get summarized up by advanced air mobility, and I'm glad that, cohesively around the world, we've stumbled upon this type of phrasing for AAM. But truth be told, I didn't even know what eCTOL was until yesterday. Now, judge me if you will, but I finally understood that that's actually the most adaptable for Hartzell, who's been doing push, pull, thrust aircraft propulsion for years. Well, the eCTOL actually adapts, and I said, okay, all right, now we got to start categorizing things. How are these things lifting? How are they thrusting? How are they, the electric, the ducted fans and horsepower and RPM? And I mean, I look around at all of you smart people, and I realize that this is a really tough space to be in. So I applaud everybody for doing it because it's tough, but it's a lot of fun. So I look at all these things. I also realize, Dave and I just talked about how tough it is to say electric, hybrid, hydrogen, this powered aircraft, in flow. And he said, just try saying triple. And he's right. But when you have all these things here, you have to start, all right, Davis, we summarize all of it down into one thing. And we all have to decide where we fit. So I'm going to go through a couple slides and talk about where Hartzell fits and where we need help within the supply chain and where we need help from solutions providers as well. And then, of course, go about the rest of the time here on the panel. So Hartzell does all the way back to 1917, and even before then. For those who don't know, they supplied the Wright brothers with their propellers. They lived 2 doors down. Mr. Hartzell lived 2 doors down from the Wright brothers, and they supplied with the wood. And then okay, here we are now, all the way later, 105 years. We provide 72% of the general aviation market with their propellers, and we really focus on that 80 horsepower to 2,200 horsepower. That's our sweet spot, right? You go bigger than that, you get within, Sentinich, you get within Hamilton Sunstream, you get within some of those biggers, and GE are going to play with those. But we're right there, and we all kind of stay out of each other's way. Macaulay does a great job, and T Propeller does a great job, but there's only so many propellers out there. So how do we now surface that into what the supply chain needs to look like? And for us, we started okay, how do we make dollars and cents out of it? So I had to explain the strategy, even though Hartzell's been doing this for 105 years, I had to explain the strategy and make sense of this market with all of these acronyms and words, and try and get engineers and everybody else internally, okay, where are we going to spend our money? Where are we going to go with it and why? So for us, everybody in the room knows this. Why advanced air mobility is complementing and enhancing the existing aviation network. But who are the early adopters? You've all seen it. The purchases have been made by the airlines. The purchases have been made by United Therapeutics and others within the medical space, and the purchase to be making, so that we can deliver people and goods. But if you look at Archer with $1 billion in orders from United and options for additional $500 million, and American and Virgin ordering, all these from Vertical Aerospace, they're all over the world, right? But the predominance is Europe, and predominance is within North America. So yes, this can help ease the congestion. It's going to help the credible alternative for very short haul routes. But you can really get down to the dollar and cents at the very end of it. It's going to not only reduce the emissions, because it can reduce 50% cheaper to operate than the helicopters. And we play in this space, we talk with the helicopters, but we haven't traditionally done anything within that lift rotor, that prop rotor. So we're trying to communicate with them, and how do we work with them, and how do we find these experts within the field. And that's why we are here today and do what we do to find solutions experts. So, the helicopters need the lift, the urban canyons, the areas that we're going to be flying into, whether it be difficulty within wide open spaces or trying to get from Teterboro down to into New York City. Those are difficult things, and we have to have the financial backing to do it. We have to understand why it matters, and then we have to be able to explain it to the marketers who have now put $1.8 billion into, $6 billion into the market in the last 18 months alone on private industry. So you all know this, but I that part of the red there, 1.9 trillion, 9 trillion by 2050, $6 billion in private investing. It's remarkable because, and I'm not trying to be rude when I say this, but the majority of people that are putting money into this don't know squat about aviation, right? And they get excited, and we see it. And we've seen 5 different companies go public in the last year and a half. And that's great, because we need that funding, right? We talked about Agility Prime earlier in the day, and the kickstart that needed. Zev was talking about it with me and saying, hey, you need that kickstart to get out there, but now we've got to advance it. Now we've got to keep going. So I'll take the $6 billion of that's out there with realistic expectations. And does anybody have realistic expectations of what's going on in advanced air mobility? My answer is no, but I think we have, in behind the scenes, we'll put that out there and we'll talk together. And Davis knows what's going on. It's just a matter of how do you get people to get over the hump of what they're afraid of. And I think that's what I'll finish on here in a second. We know this part, so I'm going to jump through. I want to mention for all of those out there that are looking and getting deeper into this, obviously we have NASA, Department of Defense, Agility Prime, FAA, EASA has a very strict set of standards that they've released. So we're looking at those organizations, but then GAMA, the General Aviation Manufacturers Association, has an EPIC committee. If you're not familiar with the Electric Propulsion and Innovation Committee, That's a great committee that's making recommendations to both FAA and EASA. If you're interested in being a part of that, join Gamma, become a associate. But if you have things to offer, that's an organization that does great. NBAA has an emerging technologies committee. UK has the ADS, which owns Farnborough and a lot of other organizations, but they have direct lines into the UK Aerospace and EASA. And then finally, the Vertical Flight Society has multiple committees. I think there are up to 22 different committees that touch on and have all kinds of academia touching within eVTOLs. And they've just gone over 600 different, I believe, corporate partners that have invested, and it was up from 175 a couple of years ago. So Vertical Flight Society, there's somebody here from there, Jim, yesterday? Jim, okay, there. Hey, good to see you. I'm pumping your wares here because you guys do a great job. Appreciate it. Absolutely. So, and you all know it's on the bottom here in the 5 categories, but the supply chain again speaks loud. And this is what we've tried to make dollars and cents of here lately. Of what's this going to cannibalize? We believe, and if anybody here thinks that it's going to go a different route, you want to add to it. But it's cutting into the helicopters, the ground travel ride sharing, and the automotive. But that's why you see these major companies making investments like Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, and launching Supernal and changing names and adapting as much as they can. Hyundai the other day announced the regional air mobility aircraft that they're doing. And I look at all that and I start to think, okay, they understand the cannibalization. It's like the BPs of the world trying to adapt, and what can we do to stay relevant when fossil fuels go away? Well, how far out are we from those kind of timing? So what are we doing at Hartzell? I'll finish this slide. There's a lot going on here, but we have to talk with, and we have to do more conferences like this to talk with companies, industry, media associations. And for us, our goal is to make sure that everybody understands when it comes to propellers, where to go to. The relationships with the motor and power plant companies, that's again for us. It's not for everybody, but that hand in hand, I was explaining to Lisa earlier, Lisa Peterson, for what we do for a traditional avgas engine, communicating over to with the governor and the propeller, there's a whole different set of fixturing and attachments that go with an electric or hydrogen powered aircraft. So we had to figure that out. It took us about 18 months, got 4 different options for every different aircraft, and it seems to apply. But that takes a long time to really work yourself into that and understand, okay, this has to fit, and it doesn't fit what we're doing. So we've been working a lot through that, and it's gone very well, but that, again, you hit a roadblock, and it takes you almost back to zero. We're watching, again, the certification. I can't talk about this enough. Between FAA and EASA and the others, something strict, but we believe at Hartzell, it all comes down to airworthiness and all comes to safety and certification. And Hartzell has their own actual ODA on staff that works directly with the FAA and has type certified over 60 different propellers and almost 1,000 STCs. So when we have that on hand in-house since the 1970s, we believe that we should be as strict as possible. We're going to fly these aircraft over people and transport people and goods. So we keep hanging our everything we do of 105 years of experience over to certification, airworthiness, and safety. And then as we look to the future, where we need help with all of you, it really comes down to lighter, faster, and cheaper. Brian Rice and I talk a fair amount. We continue to talk about automation, continue to talk about materials, strength, and lightweighting. But then as you get down into it, what about CFD modeling? What about wind tunnels? How do we pull all these pieces together? And all of you have far more than we do, even over 4 facilities in little Pickle, Ohio. You all have more things that we can partner on. And that's why NASA does what they do. And Agility Prime came out to say, how can we offer these different these different testing facilities to adopt this faster, quicker, and so my point in that last bullet is, I need all of your help, right? I need all of your help in the things that we've called out, and I think it's become, this is a good area within advanced air mobility where we cannot be too proud and say I have the answers to everything and I'm the expert at everything, because I damn well know I'm not. So I need help from everybody else to say, how do we partner on these things to get these in the air faster? So I don't see the articles that say, when am I going to see my flying car, right? Because it comes out every month, you got a different one written, and I want to get that faster, and we need that help from all of you. So I'll give you this last stat. We are working directly with the eVTOLs only. This is not including traditional aircraft that are launching, converting from avgas over, so traditional airplanes. But in the eVTOL world alone, we're working with companies that have 4,854 orders already, which for us equals hundreds of millions of dollars of dollar systems. I really want that to happen. We at Hartzell have purchased additional facilities already, preparing for this. We've invested time in materials. We've invested time on the lighter, cheaper, faster. We are taking those steps forward. It's going to happen with this entire matrix of how it all comes together. But yes, dollars and cents speak, but we can all do this together. So I'll finalize after that stat and say, Ohio does aviation great. Hartzell does propellers well. All of you do something very well. A couple things. How can what you do now, adapt over into something that can help this entire industry, this burgeoning industry, and not have to change dramatically, but how can you adapt what you do to be able to get these aircraft in the sky faster? And I'm all ears for it. Thanks for having me.
We have a couple call to actions. We got to get Mitch his propellers, and we got Matt his shoes. Thanks, Mitch. And again, it's neat to see one of our leading suppliers in the aviation pivot, recognize the market opportunity, and really lean in and make those investments in tooling into the marketplace. Thank you for that. Next up, we have Hexcel Corporation, Imad Atallah. Imad is the Director of Strategic Marketing for Hexcel Corporation. He leads, he's the leader in advanced, Hexcel is the leader in advanced composite materials, technology critical to the aerospace industry. His background includes 25 years of experience in the aerospace industry, covering engineering, marketing, and business leadership in avionics, software, composite materials, and structure. He leads product and market strategy for Hexcel America's business, and he also leads Hexcel's global strategy for supporting urban air mobility emerging market. Please help me welcome Imad Atallah.
Thank you, Tim. Just want to start off by saying how impressed I am with this event. I just want to thank the students for putting this together. You should be very proud of this. How does the supply chain topic, or the boring supply chain topic, become mainstream and popular? They just alluded to it, where you don't have to read paper. I think it kind of reminds everyone how important is that. I'd add that when a ship gets stuck in the Suez Canal, we all become experts in what it takes to get materials and supplies to products and materials everywhere. But you know, the main thing here that I would like to, hopefully after a few slides, to take away, collaboration is key. It is exciting to be part of this industry. I think the opening comments this morning were spot on. I think we are changing the world in terms of transportation, and certainly we're excited to be part of it. So I'm going to share with you a couple slides about what Hexcel is, what we make, and then pose a few challenges from a supply chain perspective that we see, and hopefully that will create some dialogue and some questions from you guys. So a few statistics. We'd like to say that our company started in a garage in California, similar to a lot of the names that we're familiar with, although we started years ago. We support commercial aviation, defense and space, and industrial, including automotive. So we supply advanced composite materials to different industries, which I'll try to hit on how urban air mobility and advanced air mobility is bringing some of those things into intersection. Won't dwell too much about that, but we're a global company. We've got a lot of facilities in the United States as well as Europe. So what do we make? We make some of the raw materials behind carbon fiber. There's no test. I'm not going to ask everybody on all of this chemistry acronyms, but we make carbon fiber. We make reinforcements, which are basically textiles that are made using carbon fiber. We take those, we make parts out of it, we make honeycombs. So we'd like to say we're vertically integrated. We make the raw material as well as the parts. So typically that gives us an advantage when it comes to working with OEM manufacturers to try to support their mission. I'll hit on that in a couple of places. We also, a plug for Ohio, we have an additive manufacturing division, and we actually use the American Inks database to bring the additive manufacturing material into the aerospace use. I'll hit on that in terms of data. When I don't know how many are familiar with composite materials and what it takes to use them in aerospace. You have to do a lot of testing, and I'm going to hit on that a couple of times. There's usually, when it comes to using a material system, which is a certain chemistry, take carbon fiber type and resin matrix, you have to put in somewhere between $1.5 to $2 million of testing to basically substantiate certification of that material. And that's expensive. Not everyone can do that. Certainly a lot of the new eVTOL players are looking for ways to collaborate on that. The American Inks database, what it did is it actually helped fund some of that initial testing and allowed the use of that testing data for its members. And that was great for us. So we're thankful for the effort behind that. So from raw material to parts, highlight some parts. We make a lot of substructures in the cells. We make finished helicopter blades for several different helicopter models, and certainly supporting the defense and mobility space as well. So when it comes to the challenges, so we'd like to break down kind of the material and the structure space into 3 different challenges. The rates, I'll say that composite materials have been around for a long time. And I would say got adopted significantly in commercial aviation 20 plus years ago. We see it today with the Airbus 350 airplane, Boeing 787. They took the composite content from somewhere around 15 to 20% to 77% plus. On the military side, I think the F-35 is probably way higher in terms of composite content. The key here is that composite materials are key to lightweighting of these vehicles. And some panelists this morning alluded to batteries, battery density, use of energy to propel these vehicles. It's really key. Now, the challenge that advanced air mobility is bringing is the rates that are being projected are significantly higher than what the aerospace industry or the commercial aviation industry has seen. And I'd say, just to give you some ideas, there's not enough equipment manufacturers for some others and other players to make enough of them to produce parts for the projections that are being made. So it's creating kind of a really big challenge from a rate perspective to figure out how these vehicles, what material to use, how they're going to be manufactured, how they're going to be processed. And this chart was trying to say is, I hear a lot, and you'll see this sometimes in the news that, somebody was able to 3D print a boat or a vehicle. Like, people get excited, and that's great. I think we are into that. That's great technology. But, it's more complex, depending on the part, how complex is the part, what is it used for, what performance is it going to have? You know, how easy is it to make it? It's going to create a place where a lot of different trades will have to be made. So material systems, and again, I started jumping into material systems. There's a lot of different processes. Some of them are here. You can obviously 3D print parts using polymers and, you know, composite materials. You can dig it up through automated machines where you've seen those robots that are going back and forth on a tool. They have tape material, compression molding. You could put some material in a press and make a part that way. Infusion is another way. So there's going to be all of those that are going to come into play to figure out what the right solution to meet the rate that's required at the right cost, which is very sensitive for the space. And the elephant in the room is aerospace grade. You know, everyone likes to say, yes, you know, this plastic material is available and it's cheap. And we say, okay, well, has it been used? Is it consistent? Does it perform? You know, is there a history on it? So that's a big deal for us. And we know that at Hexcel because we do, like I said earlier, work both in the industrial, automotive, and aerospace industries. So we understand the subtle kind of differences in that. And I'll hit on that over some questions. So when it comes to that challenge, if you zoom out a little bit and you look at this chart from left to right there, it's saying from a raw materials perspective, when you think about, you know, the type, the fiber, the matrix, the resin, the chemistry, the core, the adhesives, the qualifications, which I'm going to hit on probably some comments later on. You know, those are a lot of challenges that we have to figure out to meet those three dimensions. When you take that material, how are you going to process it? How are you going to make the structure? There's different types of doing it. What are the considerations? And how are you going to assemble it? Because the formula, you can make a material that cures quicker. We have materials that cure, it takes 6 hours to cure, and some material takes seconds. But you may offer a material that snaps cure in seconds, but if it's not used for the right part, or if the assembly now takes a lot more labor to put together, it doesn't help. So again, as I mentioned earlier, collaboration, and we operate in a lot of the space, but we don't offer all the structures to all the OEM manufacturers. We work with a lot of, you know, different manufacturers to kind of find solutions, but collaboration along those lines from a supply chain perspective is going to be key. Product development, prototyping, how quick can you prototype? What kind of different options, bringing solutions to those and collaborating is going to be key. So I'm going to stress that word, that collaboration is an advantage. You know, yesterday was a big day for us. Archer announced that they are, going into partnership with us to supply the primary materials for their vehicle. But not only that, if you read the announcements, they mention also the ability to prototype and to build structures, which they understand that key element, that in order to get to the rate that they're projecting and the cost targets, all of those things have to come together. We're going to hit on a lot of those kind of items that I have listed on here through some questions. So hopefully that, you know, seeing some of those concepts or those things will prompt some questions and some dialogue. Be happy to field them. And the last thing I would say, we have a significant footprint in the United States, and it doesn't take long with some regional conflict somewhere to make all of us realize where our material is sourced, and challenges that sometimes that reshoring was a comment. All of those materials that you saw in my earlier chart are all made in plants in the United States, and we're proud of that. We also make some of those materials outside the United States, but we think that that's an advantage when it comes to supply chain struggles, supply chain issues. So the challenge of not only looking at the materials where they're sourced, where they're made, but also from a technology perspective, we've announced last year that we're building a large technology center. What you see in the picture here is our facility in Salt Lake City, Utah. Our largest facility globally. That's where fiber is made. That's where we have also the prepreg material and the resin material is made. So everything that you see in this picture gives you an idea of the size of the facility pretty soon. So we're proud of, being U.S. manufacturer of these components, and those are some things to consider. It doesn't mean that you can be successful on sourcing everything, but certainly something to think about. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of more information on materials and structures. It's something to think about. We do have resources online. I invite people to go check out my contact information here. If there's ideas, questions, or any thoughts on it, I always want to dialogue. So again, thank you.
See how we delicately danced up here on the stage here. Nobody fell off. Thanks, Imad, and thanks for actually making strategic investments on your company's part also. And congratulations on that good work. That's fantastic. So now we'll transition to questions. Again, if you haven't put in a question, you won't be heard. Let me go ahead and start with, give this one to Davis. So NASA recently held their Advanced Air Mobility Ecosystem Working Group and established to focus on supply chain was one of the panels. What were some of the early learnings coming out of that panel? Do you have some insights you can share with the group?
I have not directly outbriefed. That is next week on the supply chain. So I wasn't on it. But I'll just say, just across the board, from it, we had 4 workshop goals. One, make sure we had the appropriate barriers defined, appropriate goal defined. Excuse me, with the comprehensive list of barriers underneath, and then the sequencing necessary. I think PK's done a great job already of laying this out via various RFIs and such.
So my apologies on that, because PK was to be on the panel, and I was fortunate to be a part of that ecosystem working group. But
So maybe you could.
Yeah, well, I'm not supposed to have it. But I will share that as you look at, I mentioned earlier, the cross sector, right? So you got this automotive industry that is building thousands. You've got aerospace that's building hundreds, and yet we're going to build thousands of eVTOLs. So how do you balance the requirements and all the rigors that the FAA requires and the processes, regulatory that has to be there? You can't have these things falling out of the sky. That's very paramount, and that gets into the supply chain, right? So, my bad.
Oh, the outreach could have happened, but I was in travel.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to go next. So next up, so this is for Hartzell. So Mitch, could you describe advanced air mobility industry priorities for scale?
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of investment. I'll start there. I mentioned and alluded that we've made purchases of different buildings to be able to scale up our composites output. But to your guys' points of building thousands to hundreds and thousands of eVTOLs, advanced air mobility is projecting all kinds of aircraft in the sky. And if, let's just say, out of the 300 different aircraft that are projected, or that are being built or designed right now, that's right, 300 are out there, and there could be even more that haven't made the press releases yet. You have to think about, let's just say 10% of those hit. Well, what do those numbers mean? And you just track everything back to money. So machinery, materials, Hexcel mentioned with what they're doing, and the amount of testing that goes into this, the quick rapid prototypes, layups for us is huge in terms of our composite propellers. We've made 50,000 of them now. We might be making 50,000 of them a year in the future, meaning blades. So we've just got to be able to scale up quick, and right now the amount of actual material to build that amount is not there. So we need more materials, we need more machinery, we need quicker automation, and truthfully, where do you remove costs, right? You remove it from material or human hands touching that and the time that it takes, or just speeding up the process, and it comes down to that. How do we narrow that and do that together? And it just takes a lot of testing on the front end. So the investment is there, but I think it's that hard order, right? That certification, everything, that $6 billion I mentioned earlier becomes $100 billion and overnight when one of these goes in the air. And I love what Joby's doing. Their certification strategy is different than anybody would have imagined, but of course that's Joby, right? But in order to do that, you have to be able to look at this as every single one of these propeller or nacelles or fuselage, everything else needs to be produced, and there's not enough material out there right now to do it.
Imad, can you speak to that? What you see from a scale-up standpoint?
Oh, the same kind of comments. I mean, the investment that's required to support the industry is huge. Even though they're smaller vehicles than some of the airplanes today, but the amount of volume just overshadows that. Some of the capacity that exists today. I mean, honestly, it may not be kind of a popular opinion, but I'm just anxious to get that number 300 down to some reasonable amount, because right now the guessing is really high. I'm not hoping that these companies fail. Maybe there's some consolidation that happens in terms of what technology they bring in, but we certainly can't commit to make the level of investment with every company now that's designing an eVTOL. Where will that capacity be is going to be an interesting question. We've strategically we've been very diligent in terms of where the footprint is, both regionally, globally, to support our customers and the risk that could be involved. So the scale up is going to be key, and the volumes are a lot higher now. Will it happen exactly as everyone's predicting? My guess would be that it'll probably be a little bit more progressive. So the ability to bring carbon fiber capacity online, some of the equipment that's needed to make blades that Hartzell is producing, people will progressively be able to bring some of the equipment online. So I think the volume increase may not be a hockey stick approach, but it will probably be a little bit more progressive. But a large investment is needed, and I'll hit on I mentioned qualifications a little bit in my presentation. Again, the selection of the material system and the investment that's going in certification. There's a race right now that a lot of the eVTOL OEMs are in to certify first. Hopefully a year from now we'll have some of that come out. But the selection of the material systems that they picked and how it's processed, that's etched in stone. So, what I see happening is there's going to be investment in bringing some of those materials at some pre-production rate, but it will go through another evolution that will bring probably another wave of investment needed. So it won't happen all at once. That's kind of my view. Is it will probably be more progressive.
Very good. Thank you, David. So where do you perceive the supply chain gaps through your lens?
Well, we see it very closely, I think, to how Imad has described it, that there's just not going to be sufficient capacity to manufacturing capacity to meet this need. But in addition to that, there's also a workforce gap, which I'm sure you appreciate. So yeah, I'll just let you answer it. No,
It is. It's new jobs. It's new types of jobs.
Absolutely. So even with the new grant program in Utah, there is a reluctance, and we haven't finalized. The state hasn't finalized all the parameters, all the criteria that they'll have for grant applicant. But we pretty much know that an applicant comes along and says, well, I'm going to use the grant money to try to find more people. But that's not going to work because we have 2.2% unemployment. So automation is the big way. Robotics are an important part of how we have a supply chain that can meet capacity goals. So, for those of you who've had a chance to see the robots here at Ohio State, where they're like training robots to be able to work with each other and do non-repetitive tasks, that's going to be beneficial down the road as well. I mean, with carbon fiber and layups, it's still a very manual process. And even with laser guidance and things that have helped speed production, it doesn't get to the levels that we're talking about.
Question for Davis. Can you talk a little bit more about how Ohio's seen as a leader in the work being done here in AAM, including either the selection as one of 5 communities of excellence from across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of what I talked about before, the way you guys have matured as a state, invested in partnerships across the ecosystem, infrastructure, airspace management, have your government working to bring these missions to fruition and actually, come up with use cases that are economically viable. That's part of what makes you an early adopter of advanced air mobility, and those are the requirements that kind of we selected you on and continue to work with you on. Again, you heard from Wayne on the airspace side. You guys are helping us identify barriers and how the system's going to progress. And really, it kind of goes back to the last question you asked, or at least I can relate it back to it. The timeline expectations for this industry, as Mitch mentioned in his talk, really kind of directly relates to how the industry is going to scale. So you have to have the early adopters, you have to get initial use cases. If that's funded or supported by the government, all the better. That's probably the easiest way to make this happen. And really, all of the scalability is dependent on getting resources and money into the advanced air mobility OEMs and ecosystem overall, so that companies can make strategic decisions and have the resources to build the capacity in early, so that when the vehicles are integrated and they are ready, the supplies and the parts are there for them. And that's going to be a delicate balancing act for everybody. If we don't synchronize those things, if the scalability and the production is not ready with airspace integration and the certification already, that directly delays the industry. And all the numbers you hear for 2035, 2045, 2050, billions, trillions, whatever, they won't happen on schedule. So you guys are at the onset of that and bring those initial use cases to bear and more of that.
Thank you. And thank to all the leaders that are playing a role in that. This one, I'd like each of you to answer, because I think it really speaks to, as we're leaning in, what is the federal and state role in supporting the AA? So, Imad, can I start with you? We'll just come on that one.
Yeah, no, great question. It kind of hits on what I was saying earlier. Historically, when it comes to kind of the aerospace industry, the decisions on how to design, what to use, and how to bring these products forward has been what Boeing and Airbus and those manufacturers have considered a significant advantage. So they've held that in, the background of years and years of capabilities, kind of bring that to bear. And what I think is important with federal and state is to be able to bring consortiums together to try to find optimized solutions. This industry isn't going to wait for 25 years for the way to build structures and the way to bring materials or how they come together kind of gets optimized. So I think federal and state capabilities and funding, or however you want to describe it, can do a lot of that to bring those players together. And what I do see also is, even from the manufacturers, the mindset is changing. Hit on kind of the qualification data, which a lot of those OEMs would spend millions of dollars to qualify materials, and they hold that very close. What we're seeing today, and Archer is a lead example, they're going to fund that and they're going to make it public. So, anything that we can do to bring consortiums together to try to bring those various pillars of at least the world that we're in, the building structures, get optimized would be good, and the openness in terms of how that data is used, which we are seeing, that's going to be key.
Yeah, I think on the federal side, something we did some work on is when it comes to qualification and certification, I think without compromising safety, that there be as much openness as possible to where can we use data modeling or to speed certification, and you kind of have that openness from FAA. At the state level, I think that where states and there are states that are unique, Ohio, Utah, Kansas, North Dakota, in terms of how they view the importance of aviation, and there's that history that I think helps them be very forward thinking. But as was just on the last panel, there has to be a greater sharing of shared interests. So when you're a state and you're looking at a technology and what you want to support, it's not just, that's going to bring us jobs and so forth. It's that now we're looking at some very long-term serious issues of sustainability. So the states can play a role in being able to bring their sustainability issues to the discussion. So in Utah, another aspect of our environment is that we have a lot of rare earths that are used in batteries. So that has an economic benefit in terms of how that will feed the supply chain, but you're also going to have to ask the question, well, then what are the repercussions of bringing that up? And then working together with federal. So that kind of long-term thinking, I think is a role. I mean, everybody's responsible for that, but I think that's where the states can
Mitch. Yeah, the federal side, I'm going to say, we can get the FAA, as Imad said, to clarify, and David said, what we're going to use for these eVTOLs, right? What's that direction? Is it more like EASA? Is it more 35, 23? What are we going with for sure? I'm sure they're doing their due diligence behind the scenes. We've had conversations, and we know what we think they're heading, but things change. So that's one thing. But the second is the state side. Having come from and spent 5 years in economic development, if you're doing something, well, first off, if you're doing something at your company, organization, academia, project, research level, whatever it is, and you're doing extremely well and you don't need help finding partners, kudos to you. If you are looking for partners and you have something novel or want to talk about it, get in touch with Tim, get in touch with Glenn, Elaine's team at the Dayton Development Coalition, Rich Knoll, the Dayton Development Coalition. They're connectors. If nothing else, they're extremely good resources to be able to marry you up with somebody that might need that help. They're a repository of knowledge that sits there saying, okay, we can help. Jim Mason bringing it back with Wright Brothers Institute. I mean, that's what their goals are, is to try and marry you up with opportunities, whether it's white papers, blue papers, toilet papers, right? I mean, it's just a matter of getting people together, and that's what JobsOhio and all the way down into the different communities do. Let's try and get everybody together. Collaboration is key.
Davis, you're up.
Yeah, from the federal perspective, I think the most important thing to start is just leadership. We have to look as a federal government overall, all three branches of government, specifically, obviously special call out to the FAA. Define a direction that everybody can get behind, coalesce that. There's so many different companies, so many different implementations, so many different use cases, acronyms soup galore. We have to somehow make that something that is continue to make that digestible to investors and reduce risk on the industry in the near term and the long term for certification overall specifically, but operational approvals are really important. The government has to decide that the United States is going to win this market globally, and our aviation leadership is at stake. So I like to talk about the partnership that we have with Agility Prime and NASA and the relationship we have with the FAA, and similarly, Agility finds relationships with the FAA. We are doing, well, it's way better than 2010, 2011 were for drones. I'll say that to start. Like, this is everybody's leagues out in front of where we were then. But I think we're doing the right things. I think Congress and executive branch are thinking about the right way. Your legislation, like advance their mobility leadership act, that it's somewhere in that process, but seems likely will happen soon. And then the state side, stay in tune to that, make sure that those leadership strategies are what you can follow, that we organize with each other, and you take care of as much as possible the local aspects of that, the zoning, the fire codes, everything you can do to make sure the communities are going to accept these, and keep pushing the noise issues, keep pushing the use cases and the investments in your state like you guys are doing. Work with other states like Mattice and organize across all of the states to make sure we don't end up with a bunch more big preemption type fights and things like that. Those will be hugely helpful areas. And then airports, that's a joint federal state thing, I think. How we're going to use the 5,000 plus, small airports that are in existence today that are 100 times underutilized for the future of this system. How do we advance all of that? Reality.
Okay, I can't thank you enough, panel. Thank you for all that you presented and giving us insights like it. Thank you.
Thank you all for very insightful panels. As Tim provided and as David mentioned, it's amazing to see how much the supply chain is really represented here in Ohio, and how many Ohio-based businesses are helping to contribute to the advancements of this industry. Supply chain is often an overlooked piece of any industry, and it's especially crucial in aerospace and aviation, and it's especially exciting to see that all that Ohio has to offer. Announcements such as Intel continue to come in, and I'm excited to see what the future of this state holds. I know in my heart, and I'm sure many of you agree, that this is just the beginning. I also was passed a note by Elaine Bryant. Thank you for the update. I wanted to announce the SpaceX crew successfully launched. They're all civilian crew to the International Space Station. This crew included the first commercial Ohio pilot, Larry Connor. They took off at approximately 11:15, so about 45 minutes ago, and all systems were go and everything went really well.